When you start modeling objects in Maya, you are always going to start with the basic shapes available to you. These shapes are called polygon primitives. If you click on shift and right click, you have a whole host of them available. But most of the time, you're going to be working with these three shapes that we'll take a look at. You will be working with the sphere, the cube, the cylinder, and sometimes the torus. So let's move all of these aside so we can see all the shapes that we have. When Maya creates its polygon primitives, what it does is it creates a shape that is the bare minimum to hold the form of this object. So for the cube, you can see that you have just 6 faces, you don't have any faces in between, and the cube can hold the shape. But for any object that has a curve, like these three objects right here, you need a little more. You need a few more subdivisions, a few more faces to hold that shape. So for the sphere, you can see that's the densest objects because without them, you can't have this perfect spherical shape. And for the cylinder, you have subdivisions around the circumference of the cylinder so that it can hold that circular shape, but you don't have any over the sides. And for the torus, again, since it's a circular shape, you have those subdivisions to hold that shape. When you first create these objects, you can edit their properties. So let's start with the cube. This is the most basic one. And you can edit these properties only when you first create them. Once you start editing the shape, once you start actually modeling, using the modeling tools to edit it, you can't change these properties. Your model is most likely going to break. So when you start out, it's a good idea to take a look at this and see if this matches what you want to do. These are available in the channel box, and when you first create it, you'll see something called Polycube 1. For most of them, it's just shows what shape it is. So polysphere, polycylinder, and polytorus. So for polycube, if I click on this, you can change the width, height, and depth. So I can just type in a number here. You see it change that, change the width. I can type in 3. So you can change these values here. If you left click and drag, you can change multiple at the same time. So for example, I left click, drag all 3 of these boxes, and I want to change this all to 4. These units here that you see, the width, height, and depth, Maya just has a number here, but these will be whichever units you set in the preferences of Maya. We're not going to look into that right now, but by default, the unit is usually centimeters. I don't change it from that, but in some circumstances, people prefer using inches, prefer changing it to meters. So that's completely up to you. But just know that these numbers are based on real life measurements. And then you have the subdivisions for this object. And again, you can type in any number here and it'll add those subdivisions. So you see it added a few edges. You can add, again, you can add edges, faces, or whatever you want here. And now if you want a more dynamic way to edit these, you don't just want to type numbers, you kind of want to just play around and see what works well. You can click on this subdivisions width, whichever value you want to change. Go to your workspace and press your middle mouse down and drag. And once you do that, you'll be able to edit it dynamically. So you can just add as many as you want, see how it looks, and edit that dynamically. Unless you have a specific purpose, I would leave the cube at the default. You can also, again, go here, left mouse click and drag and type in a number. I would leave it at this default unless there's a specific purpose for not doing that. For the sphere, our most dense object, let's just take a look at what happens if you really reduce these subdivisions. So I'm going to click on this one, shift click on this one, and just middle mouse drag it over. So you can see as you reduce the subdivisions, it doesn't hold the perfect spherical shape that well. And if you do want a perfect spherical shape, the 20/20 that you have here is a good number to have. I've noticed that if you reduce it to 16, it's not too bad. Like if you want a something that's less dense. But if you start going lower, you see that the shape kind of starts to break. So again, depending on what you're doing, you leave it at the default or you change it. You can also go into your channel box and rename these shapes. So you have, when you click on this, you have the name here. You can double click and name it to my sphere. I'm just going to name it something. Or you can also do that from the outliner. Click on the name, double click, and you can rename it.